Hello, my Walking with Jesus friends on this Friday. Do you like stories which have happy endings? Sadly, in both the artificial world of entertainment, but also the world of reality, happy ending stories are rare in our modern world, no matter where you live in the world. Do you agree? But today, I'm happy to invite you into the happy ending of a story we've been experiencing the past several days. This remarkable event happened about 2,000 years ago in the city of Philippi, Macedonia. It's recorded for us in Acts chapter 16 in the Bible. I left you yesterday with the Apostle Paul and Silas, who were having their beating wounds cared for and be given a meal by the prison jailer after a violent earthquake shook the city of Philippi. We watched yesterday as the jailer and his family heard the gospel message about Jesus from Paul and Silas. They were convinced of their need for a Savior, and they trusted Jesus. Then they were baptized, and the jailer's family prepared and served a meal to Paul and Silas that night, according to Acts 16. It appears the jailer did a very wise thing by returning Paul and Silas to the prison, perhaps before daylight. Please remember the legal code of that day. Prison guards were held responsible and executed if prisoners escaped on their watch. At daylight, officers came from the city magistrates with orders for the jailer to release Paul and Silas. Neither the jailer nor we have any explanation. I'm sure the jailer was delighted to pass along this good news to Paul and Silas, and then was shocked at their response. The record says, "But Paul said, they beat us publicly without a trial, even though we are Roman citizens, and they threw us into prison." Acts 16, verse 37. Suddenly, everything changed in that Philippian prison. While we may have the impression that the Roman Empire of the first century was a ruthless, violent society which persecuted the people, in truth, Roman citizens were protected by law from any punishment without a fair trial and being found guilty. Paul and Silas had received no trial and no justice. They had been beaten with rods and imprisoned. When the officers heard Paul and Silas were in fact Roman citizens, everything changed. They returned quickly to the magistrates, who had ordered both the beating and imprisonment. And as the magistrates heard the news, they were terrified. Paul and Silas could press charges against these magistrates, and the magistrates could easily have found themselves in that dungeon as prisoners, while Paul and Silas would walk away free and perhaps even with some restitution. My guess is this may have been the first time the Philippian magistrates had ever visited this dungeon, at least for the purpose of an apology. The record states the magistrates came to the dungeon to appease Paul and Silas and escorted them out of the prison, requesting them to leave the city. Paul and Silas then went to Lydia's house, where they met with the brothers and sisters and encouraged them. Then they left Philippi, Acts 16, verse 38 to 40. Pause. How do you handle apologies, especially when you've been wronged or humiliated publicly? Is an apology in those circumstances a wonderful opportunity for retribution, or at least an eye for an eye, getting even? Was Paul seeking retaliation here, or standing up for the legal rights of Roman citizens and calling the magistrates to respect their role of upholding the high standards of justice? My friends, I see some important life lessons here as followers of Jesus seeking to live our lives honorably when often surrounded by corruption, injustice, dishonesty, and even dysfunctional leadership. First, I see Paul's high regard for truth wrapped in humility. Do you see that? The truth of this situation was that Paul's Roman citizenship basic rights had been badly violated, and he had every right to seek retaliation against those who had abused him. While Paul was being tied to the whipping post or being stripped for the beating he was about to receive, Paul could have loudly declared his citizenship, demanded his rights, and publicly humiliated those magistrates. Instead, Paul held his tongue. And as the magistrates came to the prison the next day, I see in them respect and gratitude for prisoner Paul, which may have softened their hearts to hear Paul's explanation of Jesus and his priority of living a God-honoring life. Second, Let's remember Philippi had been badly shaken by an earthquake, damaging the prison and we presume many other buildings. I wonder if Paul took the opportunity to explain God's sovereign control over all things on earth, and that sometimes God responds to human events by unleashing his mighty power. Can you imagine how the magistrates might view the relationship between their failure as community leaders and the wreckage they saw as they walked the streets of their city? Third, do you notice Paul and Silas went to Lydia's home to meet with those who were the first Philippian Christians for the purpose of encouraging them? How do you and I handle the opportunities we have to speak derogatorily of others, especially others who have failed in leadership? We live in a world today where very rarely are leaders affirmed or celebrated, especially government leaders. Paul and Silas, with their beating wounds not yet calloused, were teaching these Philippian Christians how to be Jesus followers in the face of persecution, while at the same time honorable, helpful citizens. Americans around the world have just celebrated the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. If you are an American, no matter where you live in the world, are you living as an honorable, helpful resident of the place where you live? Is your community blessed by having you live there? Are we teaching our children and grandchildren how to live every day being a blessing to all? Paul knew Israel's history very well. 600 years earlier, Jerusalem had been invaded by King Nebuchadnezzar and thousands of Jews taken captive. They were hauled off to Babylon, and after a while they received a letter from the prophet Jeremiah, in which Jeremiah gave them this shocking message from God: "Seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for that city." Jeremiah 29, verse 7. Do you suppose Paul may have quoted those words to the Philippian Christians that day, as Paul and Silas prepared to leave Philippi? Do you and I pray for the peace, law and order, and prosperities of the cities where we live? I think we need to pause right here, and the lessons learned notes below will be very helpful to further reflection about these important truths. Then let a choir of teenagers draw our hearts to find hope in Jesus with this familiar old song, and I'll be here ready for you tomorrow.